Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting, June 17th, 2025. We'll call this meeting to order and ask that everyone mute their cell phones and other electronic devices so we're not interrupted. And I will ask Manager Bayhan to do a roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Trustee Myers?
Here.
Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Trustee Orsick?
Here.
Trustee Alvinson?
Here.
Trustee Handler?
Here.
President Dearborn?
Here. Item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight I'll ask Trustee Alvinson lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Kirk. And we'll now do a quorum check. Rob?
Right. As announced the last meeting, July 1st regular meeting will be canceled due to the holiday week. And then we have the July 8th study session and the July 15th regular meeting. Are there any conflicts?
I'll be out the 8th.
The 8th, okay.
I'll be here the 8th, but not the 15th.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. At this time, we'll ask for public comment and ask if anyone in the audience wants to speak about an item not on tonight's agenda. And I would appreciate it, we would all appreciate it if you would just direct your public comment throughout the evening to the trustees. Thank you.
I always direct it to the trustees. Hi, Ted Winnichenko. So I'm not as angry this week as I was last week. I guess I've come to understand that just like in our national discourse, the rule of law and representing the people is really not what we're all about anymore. It's really about power, money, and government working for those who have it at the expense of those that don't. So it's shocking to me, though, that at such a local level, our village would choose to misrepresent and make unlawful statements and threaten the public without really providing any clear evidence that they've done anything wrong. It seems to me like I was an idiot last year. When the village brought the citation for trespassing, quote unquote, I was an idiot for not taking it forward. I wanted to. My lawyer didn't want to. The village didn't want to. No one wanted to except me. And I realized the reason for that is because the village's client, Mr. Ishbia, realized, and the village realized, that if they went to court, they would lose. And there'd be precedent then about what is and isn't public land. And so now the village has chosen to up the game. Now they're threatening me with a misdemeanor, although I was never on private land, and the village doesn't even allege that I was. They just use this vague construction zone issue. There's no law about construction zones. And then they threatened me with immediate arrest, although that is clearly in violation of the Safety Act. So whether that was a purposeful misrepresentation or just because council doesn't know the law is a real problem, because those are both infringements on my civil liberties. And what's funny to me is that if the village had just not said anything, there's a good chance this would have blown over, because I right now have personal issues with my family and them needing help, and my mom. I probably wouldn't have had time for this, but now I am so unhappy that I'm gonna make time. And it's just disappointing to me. This really should be a village for all the people. We shouldn't be trying to misrepresent the law. We shouldn't be threatening residents with false statements. And I'm sorry, it's really bothersome to me. So if you guys want to take me to court, if you charge me with a misdemeanor, you'll have a burden of proof that is beyond a reasonable doubt. And since I'll never be on private land, you won't be able to meet that. And if you arrest me, that'll even be worse, because that's a direct violation of statute. And I'll sue you, because that may impact my livelihood if I am charged with a misdemeanor. I may have issues with my license, and that is a direct financial threat. So I'm hoping that we won't do that, but if that's the way you want to go, we will.
Anyone else here for public comment on items not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, and we'll move on to reports. So we'll start with trustees. Trustee Handler,
No report.
trustee Albinson,
No report.
trustee Orsick,
No report.
trustee Apatoff,
No report tonight.
trustee Myers,
No report.
village attorney,
No report.
village manager.
No report this evening.
Wow, okay. The only report I have is that since we don't have a meeting on July 1st, I want everyone to remember that July 4th follows July 1st, and there's a wonderful event in Winnetka on July 4th, and anyone in town should certainly be able to try to join that event. There will be a village truck of some sort that we all get to ride down and see wonderful people, friends of ours. And so if you can make it, it would be great. I'm sure we'll be getting more communication on that over the next couple of weeks. So that's it. The only thing I had to say. As we go into this meeting, of course, and I said it before, I'd ask that we try to refrain from histrionics and booing and cheering and so on and so forth with any meeting. And again, when it comes to public comment, please direct your public comment to the trustees, and we can digest them and proceed accordingly. So we'd appreciate that. At this point, I'd like to have an establishment of the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove any item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? No? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second? That's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Before we move on to the consent agenda, there's one item on the consent agenda that there was actually discussion of moving it off the consent agenda, and that has to do with the contract that we're going to approve tonight to repair the Elder Storm sewer pipe outlet, the pipe down at Elder. The village and the Park District staff have been collaborating on this issue and the necessary actions needed towards reopening the beaches, which we know is a priority to this community. So tonight, all we're doing is approving a contract to repair the village-owned pipe down there. The Park District is driving the bus in terms of timing on this issue, and once the Park District has a contractor for their portion of the work, which could include the pier repair, possibly the lake bed cleanup, the village will be ready to complete our repairs in a timely and coordinated manner. I just wanted to make that point because it is an issue that has received a fair amount of public scrutiny, and I'm delighted to say that the Park District staff and the village staff have been collaborating directly on a regular basis on this issue, so we just stand ready to work with them whenever possible. So that's what that item is on the consent agenda for tonight. And at this point, I'll ask Rob, we'll go to approval of consent agenda, and Rob will read each item.
Thank you. Approval of the village council minutes for May 13, 2025 study session and the May 20th, 2025 regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated May 30th, 2025 through June 12th, 2025 in the amount of $863,067.65. Resolution number R49, 2025, approving a contract with DeMeo Brothers Incorporated for construction services for the Elder Storm Sewer Outfall Replacement Project. And resolution number R50, 2025, approving a contract with M.E. Simpson Company Incorporated for leak detection service. Resolution number R52, 2025, approval of MFT resolution for the Rebuild Illinois funds for the Willow Road project. Resolution number R54, 2025, approving a contract with Superior Road Striping for pavement marking services. Resolution number R56, 2025, ratifying a grant agreement between the State of Illinois, Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, and the Village of Winnetka for police department cameras. And resolution number R59, 2025, approving a contract with Wesco Distribution Incorporated for the purchase of 15 kV underground cable.
Well, that's a mouthful. Thank you, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Orsick?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on to item 8, ordinances and resolutions. First item is ordinance number M08, 2025, approving a final plat of subdivision and granting a variation from the Winnetka zoning ordinance. This is for 557 and 561 Lane. This item is up for introduction and possibly adoption. The applicant is proposing to consolidate 2 existing lots
demolish one of the existing residences, a shed and detached garage, and construct additions on the lot with the remaining property. Community Development Director Scott Mangum will review this item. Scott?
Yes, thank you, President Dearborn. As stated, the item tonight is a consolidation variation at 561 and 557 Orchard. The site is located on the north side of Orchard Lane between Walnut and Poplar. It's within the R5 zoning district and consists of 2 equal-sized lots. Each are 8,260 square feet in size and 50 feet in width. Each of the existing lots contain 2-story residences. The 557 Orchard parcel also contains a storage shed, and the 561 Orchard parcel contains a detached 2-car garage. The comprehensive plan designation is for single family at this site, and the applicant is proposing to have 1 single-family home remain in compliance on the site. Photo here is of the subject property, 561 Orchard on the left and 557 to the right. The applicant currently resides at 561 Orchard, which they acquired in 2021. Subsequently, they acquired the adjacent property in 2024. And they have submitted an application for demolition at 557 Orchard, which was considered and approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. The consolidation of these existing parcels would create a single buildable lot measuring 16,500 square feet. The consolidations represented the image on the right, and then the plat is on the left. The applicant intends to remove the existing shed on 557 Orchard and the garage on 561 Orchard, and construct an addition to the east side of the existing residence at 561 Orchard. The existing driveways would also be removed with a new driveway installed on the east side of the proposed lot that would lead to a side-loaded attached 3-car garage. Preliminary zoning review of the proposed improvements has been completed to verify it's being presented in compliance with the zoning regulations. The proposed consolidation also fully complies with the zoning standards. Both existing lots are non-conforming with regards to the minimum required lot area and the minimum required lot width. So the consolidation would eliminate 2 non-conforming lots to create 1 conforming lot. The proposed resulting lot is approximately 280 square feet under the threshold and 20 feet in width under the threshold to require a special use. So that's not required in this instance. The consolidation would increase the average lot width to 100 feet, which results in an increased side yard setback of 12 feet. So the result of this increased setback requirement is that the existing setback of 5.98 feet from the west property line be non-conforming, hence the request for the variation. The advisory bodies that reviewed this, as mentioned, the Historic Preservation recommended approval by a 5-0 vote. Also unanimously recommended for approval in May were the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Plan Commission. So with that, given the ZBA and the Plan Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request, council may wish to either consider waiving introduction and consider adoption this evening, or consider only introduction this evening. That concludes the staff presentation. Available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Is the applicant here by chance? Do you want to come up and make any comments about your project here?
Hi, my name is Catherine Kirkpatrick, and I'm the applicant in question. Thank you for your consideration. Just some context for the project. My husband and I, neither of us are native Chicagoans or Winnetka. My parents are in Cincinnati. My husband's parents are in Orlando. We moved here in 2021, and we think Winnetka is an outstanding place to raise a family, so we're here forever. We want this to be our forever home. When our parents come to stay, they're getting older, they stay in the basement, which is fine, but not ideal. So the real impetus behind this project was actually twofold. One, we have an exceptionally narrow driveway that has taken off our side mirrors a few times. And also we want a dedicated space for our parents when they come and stay. So the addition, as you can see in the plans, is moving a detached 2-car to an attached 3-car and reconfiguring the driveway for more space. And then the actual living space of the addition is basically an in-law suite. We have consulted our neighbors. We actually disseminated letters to all neighbors within a 250 feet radius. I think it was 21 letters, including, we ensured that they had copies of the architectural plans and details on maintenance of a historic tree in the front, addressing groundwater and other issues of concerns. Our neighbors are wholly supportive. We received no opposition throughout this process, and actually one unsolicited letter of support. The 557 property is in an exceptionally poor condition. There was literally a hole that fell off the side of the structure. It has not been inhabited since approximately 2020, since prior to us even moving here. So obviously, the neighbors are exceptionally in support of demolition of that property, but also in favor of the project because the actual airspace and green space would probably be superior given our plans as opposed to if the existing structure in 557 was demolished and replaced by a new structure. So happy to answer any questions, but we
Okay.
appreciate your consideration.
Thank you for that. Before we go to public comment, any questions for Scott or the applicant here?
I think
Rob?
maybe a comment.
Sure.
I was on the Plan Commission where we reviewed this, and, it's interesting. Those streets are important streets. And I wasn't in a big rush to start consolidating lots. They're a good place for people to come into this community. I think that's important to give people access versus making it unaffordable or to change the character of those streets. As a trustee, I don't vote on the Plan Commission, but I think their reasoning was very sound. That house I've spent a fair amount of time out there. That house is a mess. It's got to come down. The Preservation Society, that group said, without delay, take it down. But this has not set precedent, as I think, Peter, that's correct. Does not set precedent. So this is a case-by-case basis. While I'm not in a hurry to start consolidating lots on those really charming streets, I think this one makes sense.
Okay. On that point, and Scott, you may want to put this in the back of your mind. Last week, we talked about some items that we might address. One might be zoning-related issues. That might be something to talk about, just character of neighborhoods and that type of thing. But I think that Trustee Apatow put it well in terms of this project, in terms of the application and the character of the home that's going down and so on and so forth. But I think, Scott, we should probably address that issue at some point. Before we move this along, is there anyone in the audience that would like to have public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back here. Any thoughts? Oh, you can sit down. Thank you, though.
Out of the hot seat. No,
She dismissed you.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to compliment the owner, though. I do, to Trustee Apatow's point, I saw consolidation on that street, and at first I cringed a little, but then when I saw the design, I see it's very in keeping with the existing home. I was glad to see this was not being consolidated to build a single home on double lots. So I appreciate the sensitive design, and it sounds like a really positive modern use, a modernization of what is already a lovely home that you own. Thank you. So, thank you.
Is there any appetite to waive introduction on this issue?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Then do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M08-2025?
So moved. Second.
And that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M08-2025?
So moved.
Second.
That's a roll call vote.
Trustee Alvinson?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Okay, you're off and running. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. We move on to item B here, resolution number R58-2025. A commitment to implement pillar number 4, the sustainability and climate action of the Village Comprehensive Plan. And this is being considered for adoption. Tonight, council will consider the adoption of resolution number R58-2025, a commitment to support and advance sustainability goals. Sustainability Coordinator Elise Steiner will present. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you, and good evening, and thank you, council members. I'm Elise Steiner, the Sustainability Coordinator for the Village, and I'll give a brief presentation and then follow that by reading the actual resolution. The Sustainability and Climate Action Pillar of the Winnetka Futures 2040 Comprehensive Plan includes as one of its goals that the village will implement initiatives that reflect sustainability as a core value in Winnetka. The village has made progress towards implementing Pillar 4, undertaking the following sustainability initiatives over the past year. Last fall, the village hired its first ever sustainability coordinator to prioritize implementing environmental sustainability and climate initiatives. And this past winter, installation and commissioning of the village's 7th public EV charging station was completed. In March of this year, Council approved a study of generation at the power plant, including exploring renewable and cleaner energy options. In April, the Council approved a $5.3 million contract to implement advanced metering infrastructure village-wide. Once complete, this project will give the village more opportunities to pursue energy conservation. And the village approved a contract to develop a climate action plan in May. We expect this work to be completed within 12 months. Looking ahead, and attached to this resolution are some preliminary actions and investments that the village intends to analyze and consider, such as a solar array at the landfill, rooftop solar panels on municipal buildings, procuring hybrid or electric fleet vehicles, assistance for home electrification, and using the advanced metering technology to realize electricity savings. So with that, this resolution, a commitment to implement Pillar 4, Sustainability and Climate Action of the Village Comprehensive Plan, the Village Council expresses the support for sustainability initiatives that protect the environment for a more resilient, equitable, and healthy future. So now this is the text of the resolution. Whereas climate change poses serious threat around the world, more intense heat waves, droughts, heavy downpours, and other extreme weather events, and some effects are already being felt locally in the form of hotter summers, damages from wind and severe storms, changes in winter weather, and potential for compounding effects. And whereas municipalities across the nation, recognizing the urgency and gravity of climate change, are taking leadership roles to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase energy efficiency, renewable energy, adapt to adverse impacts, and protect infrastructure, environment, vulnerable populations, and communities. And whereas municipal governments have unique strengths in developing community resilience and in taking long-term action to mitigate climate change that are amplified through regional collaboration. And whereas the Winnetka Village Council engaged with residents and community stakeholders to identify a set of key themes or community pillars in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, including Pillar 4, Sustainability and Climate Action, to serve as a guide for future planning. And whereas the Winnetka Village Council has approved funding for a climate action plan that will set long-term goals and be aligned with the goals of the Sustainability and Climate Action Pillar, and where feasible, will act on opportunities to do the following. A, evaluate procuring renewable energy credits that allow the village to claim the use of zero carbon energy. B, support energy efficiency investments and electrification with rebates and technical support. C, deploy the advanced metering infrastructure technology to implement demand response, conservation voltage reduction, and other energy management programs. D, assist homeowners and businesses with rooftop solar by streamlining the approval process. E, assess the potential for developing a solar array on the Willow Road landfill and other village facilities. F, explore opportunities for cleaner generating capacity at the electric plant and other locations. G, pursue fleet vehicle electrification and expanding EV charging infrastructure. And H, consider other investments, technologies, and measures that can mitigate global climate change. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Village of Winnetka, Cook County, Illinois, hereby expresses its support for and pledges to take strategic climate action to pursue these outcomes for a more resilient, equitable, and healthy future. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. To the council for a moment for any questions for Elise. Any questions? Scott?
I don't have a question. I do have a change that I'd like to make later on. I don't know if you want to do comments first or talk about it.
Okay,
or-
why don't we ask for public comment before that? We'll come
Yeah.
back to that. Would anyone in the public like to comment on this resolution?
Hi, Marcus Wagner, 810 Road. Just wanted to appreciate the presentation. Just wanted to double click on the approval process for permitting. People may know the new tax bill is going to eliminate the 30% investment tax credit for residential solar. And so anybody who's looking at solar in the village of Winnetka this year, sitting here in June, has 6 months in order to get something permitted and installed in order to take advantage of the 30% tax credit, which is a meaningful number, given that the residential solar can be thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. Winnetka, rightly or wrongly, has a reputation for being a little less than rapid in getting these approvals done. And so whatever the village council or the village staff can do, just a double click on this specific part of the resolution for this year. So the residents aren't in a position where they miss out by weeks or even months to take advantage of the 30% tax credit.
Thank you for that, Marcus. We appreciate that. Others on comment on this resolution? Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back. Scott, would you like to?
Yeah, I think that where we're heading, right, is we're going to ask the Environmental, Forestry, and Sustainability Commission to come back to us with some specific recommendations. I guess the specific point that I wanted to kind of maybe tweak is item D, where it says assist homeowners and businesses with rooftop solar, kind of to Marcus's point, or by streamlining the approval process. Well, that's just one thing we could do, right? There are other things we could do, and I think that I don't want to limit the commission from coming back and saying, well, here's how you approve the process. We could say we're going to allocate funds to provide a credit to residents to put in solar. It doesn't have to be just solar. It could be heat pumps, right? I think there are other technologies, and I guess I would like to broaden that and say simply assist homeowners and businesses with implementation of rooftop solar or other green energy technology.
Okay, without objection, you would add that to the resolution. Any objection to that? Okay, so Scott.
And then I'd also like to just add an editorial comment. I won't ask for a change on this, but personally, I think that renewable energy credits is kind of a waste of money. We'll let the Environmental Commission come back with their own perspective on that, but so I don't feel it needs to be struck. I just think it's a waste. Yes, yeah. So I'm fine with saying.
So Scott, we're adding with rooftop solar or other.
Yeah, with implementation of rooftop solar or other green energy technology.
Or other green energy technology. You've got that, Peter? Okay. Any other comments from the council before we move on? Yeah, thank you for that, Scott. So, may I have a motion to adopt resolution number R5825 with the amendment as stated?
So moved.
Second.
That's a roll call vote.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Alvinson?
Yes.
Trustee Handler? Yes. Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elise. We move on to item C, ordinance number M5 2025, authorizing the execution of a new power sales contract and a new capacity purchase agreement with the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency for the delivery period commencing October 1st, 2035. And this ordinance is being considered for adoption. At the June 3rd regular meeting, Council further discussed the contract renewals and introduced ordinance number M05 2025. Tonight, Council will make final deliberations on its decision regarding the IMEA contract extension. Water and Electric Director Nick Nari is here to present the item.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, President Dearborn, Council, and members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I just have some brief prepared remarks, and then I understand there may be some final questions from Council that staff will be happy to answer. Since the introduction of the new contract in February of 2024, staff have worked diligently over the last 14 months to provide a thorough, transparent process. An overview of those steps is as follows. In 2024, the IMEA board convened a working group to develop the contract, and board members had the opportunity to provide input at that time. Prior to IMEA board approval and the final form of the contract, each community had a chance to have their corporate counsel review the draft documents. In our case, it was Elrod Friedman. I would note that some of the IMEA board members are the village or city attorneys. Those sitting board members are attorneys. None of the 27 member communities who have executed the contract have taken exception to any terms and have approved the contract in their original forms. Staff have conducted 4 study sessions on this topic, presented at 1 regular council meeting, as well as participating in the Future Energy Forum. We were introduced to Mr. Mark Pruitt. We have evaluated alternate grid supply approaches such as a power marketer, going it alone in PJM, forming a new joint action agency, or selling the utility to ComEd. This thorough analysis was done both with in-house staff research as well as engaging independent market expertise through Mr. Mark Pruitt. In the absence of compelling economic drivers resulting from direct PJM membership, it was recommended that the village's utility continue its engagement with IMEA. I will also note that Customized Energy Solutions, or CES, who is a major energy market participant, did a months-long study for the city of Naperville to similarly evaluate their supply options. Their conclusion was that the best long-term option for Naperville was to continue with IMEA and work within the contract to leverage sustainability initiatives while benefiting from IMEA's stable supply cost. As a reminder, Naperville is 10 times our size in terms of load. During the public review process, Winnetka staff and council were encouraged to be nimble, and we believe that a continuation of our relationship with IMEA does just that. IMEA board members, like the agency itself, are public servants committed to achieving good results for their communities. By not having specific resources or prices enshrined in the contract, IMEA can be nimble with how it goes about navigating the marketplace. Resource acquisitions or power contracts are always going to require board approval in any case, but that can be done efficiently on a case-by-case basis as opposed to asking 32 members to reopen their contracts every single year. IMEA is committed to its sustainability goals and 2015 net zero vision. Their sustainability plan is a living document reviewed annually and updated every 3 years as changes in the market occur and new technological opportunities become available to the agency. The plan was developed with stakeholder engagement through the board members and approved unanimously, which demonstrates its importance to the member communities. Winnetka has a long history of influencing policy in IMEA. Former director and board member Brian Keyes was a key advocate for energy efficiency, electric vehicle incentives, and the increased generation capacity payments that we will start to see as soon as May 1st of this year. And he also served on multiple working groups and subcommittees over his 17-year service. Winnetka can take a similar role in years to come in building coalitions on the board and advancing the goals of this community through policy influence in Springfield. It is important to remember that we are IMEA through our participation on the board. IMEA is not an agency to which we have no say in their operations. Being a member of IMEA gives the village advantages in the marketplace through economies of scale and the ability to invest directly in generation assets while sharing the risks and rewards with 31 other communities. IMEA, as a nonprofit joint action agency, is a good example of government working well for its constituents, which is the reason you see so many municipal utilities across the country using a similar model for their power supply. In recent news, Meta purchased about 1 gigawatt, which is 1,000 megawatts of capacity from the Clinton nuclear power plant. This is equivalent to the load of all the IMEA members combined. So all of IMEA is equivalent to what Meta just purchased from Clinton. Amazon is taking a very similar approach with a nearly 2 gigawatt pending nuclear deal with Talon Energy in Pennsylvania. Strength in numbers with IMEA will allow its members to compete for scarce resources in what could very well become the Wild West of power supply in years to come. Utilities across the country, be they investor-owned or municipal, are all going to be racing to meet these net zero goals by 2050 over the next 25 years. Having a seat at the table with aligned Illinois communities will allow Winnetka to influence that transition and do so in a manner that will keep our rates as stable and reliable as possible as they have been for the last 40 years with IMEA. And that concludes my comments, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Nick at this point? Scott, Rob?
Not yet.
Not yet. Anyone down here?
How do you want to do questions
You
now,
have
then
questions
public
for
comment,
Nick.
and
You
then?
could ask questions for Nick, then we'll open public comment, and then we'll bring it back here.
Okay, well, I do have some questions, but cut me off if you want to go to public comment.
Okay.
But, Nick, want to talk a little bit about the broad issue of take or pay, which has been talked a lot about in the public.
Sure.
And and we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but I think it's an important issue that I think, getting clarity on it is important. So can you explain how Winnetka gets billed by IMEA?
Right, so
How does that happen?
Yep. So this was, I covered this in my staff report, but I'm happy to speak to it further. So essentially, and I tried to make this analogy at the last meeting. Hope maybe it didn't take hold, but essentially, we are a customer for IMEA like you are customers for Winnetka. So IMEA has meters on all of our connection points to the ComEd system. They look at our demand and our consumption on a monthly basis, and that determines our pro rata share of the cost of service. So in the agenda packet, I believe we're about 3.5% to 4%, depending on the month. It varies month to month of IMEA's cost. So we only pay for what we use. So if we were to reduce our consumption through energy efficiency programs, MDR just purely, or for example, Nutria's rooftop solar, that's going to reduce the village's overall energy consumption. That's going to determine what we pay to IMEA. So on a monthly basis, they look at what we consumed, what all of us consumed, residents, business owners, the schools, and we get charged that portion of our cost through IMEA.
And I just want to kind of spend a second on this point because I think it's important. So as I read the contract, if we were to institute a policy using smart metering, which incented people to run their dryers, charge their cars, do things in off-peak hours. Right. That gets captured every 5 minutes.
Correct.
And that gets factored into what we as a village get charged.
Correct.
Okay, so what happened 2 years ago doesn't impact what happens today. And might not impact, and doesn't impact what happens tomorrow or 2 years from now.
Right, correct. So there's two things. For billing purposes, you're correct. If we reduce our consumption, which we have historically, we've actually been trending downward in terms of consumption of electricity as a village. IMEA doesn't have some magic number that we are billed for regardless of whether or not we use it. We only pay for what we use. The analogy I made in the staff report was with Nutria. Now that they're going to reduce their consumption with the solar panels, the village can't arbitrarily go back and claw back that consumption because that's what they owe us. We just have to, we charge them for what they use. So it's a very similar approach. I would say for planning purposes, our past consumption matters. IMEA is, as I mentioned last time, is a 24/7 operation. If you were to call down there now, there's someone sitting at the operations desk watching the power markets. So they use the past to help predict the future. They're projecting as far as 20 years out into the future for what they think Winnetka and the agency is going to use. So they use our past consumption to try to predict what we are going to use in the future. On an annual basis, we provide them updates to help make those predictions accurate. So recently we told them about Nutria Solar, One Winnetka. Obviously that's been a vacant site for years. Now it's going to actually be consumption, real consumption that we're going to see in the village. Chase Bank, all the District 36 projects. So we try to give as much information as we can to IMEA so they can make accurate predictions as to what the village is going to use. But we only get billed for what we use, not an arbitrary number.
Okay, so can I keep?
Yeah, I was going to just say, Scott, so Nick, we are on a take and pay basis, not a take or pay basis. There are municipalities in joint action agencies or with other providers that are take or pay, where there is a certain amount of demand that if they don't take it, they're going to pay for it. That is not us, correct?
Right. So I'll try to speak to the term take or pay as a contractual language, and hopefully I don't butcher it. Peter can correct me, but then I'll speak to the example that you're referring to. So take or pay is something that we need to have in our contract because in order for the agency to get debt financing, there has to be a guarantee, there has to be collateral, and that collateral is future revenue from the members. So right now our debt service runs through 2035. Take or pay is a way that they can guarantee that the revenue they're going to get for the members will be used to help pay down that debt service. So that's what take or pay is used for as a contractual term. For practical purposes, the example you're mentioning is from Batavia. What Batavia tried to do was a little bit different than how IMEA manages our portfolio. Is they purchased a 55 megawatt piece of Prairie State on a 24/7, 365 basis, which would be like us buying a 40 megawatt piece of Prairie State, even though we only hit 40 megawatts 1 hour of the year. So you're required to take that 55 take or pay for the entire year, even though the other 8,000 hours of the year, you're not using that much electricity. So that was the downside to that approach, was that when power prices were very low, that created a risk for Batavia to take that approach. That could change based on where the capacity market is going. That might flip, but that's not how IMEA does it for us. I tried to explain this in the staff report. At the operations center, they're monitoring this on a 5-minute and hourly basis, monthly, yearly, years out into the future. Essentially, our load profile is like a curve. Obviously, it fluctuates up and down, up and down. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to fill that curve, integrate the curve, if you remember your calculus from back in the day. So IMEA is doing that for us around the clock, 24/7. The risk management policy does not allow them to buy more power than the agency needs, because that would obviously create risks, similar to what Batavia was faced with. So they can only procure as much capacity and energy as the agency needs to meet its consumption.
So what happened today down at the plant? Hot day, the plant
Right.
was running.
Right.
How does that fit into this equation?
Right, so today was actually served multiple purposes. It was a PJM called for a test. Every year we have to prove our capacity to PJM. That snaps the line for our capacity credits, and also lets PJM know exactly how much power they can expect from us if there were an event, a load shedding event or a major disruption that we would have to come online. So right now we hit about 22, 23 megawatts is what we're capable of, and we hit that number today. So we were at one point between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., about 92% of the power in the village was coming from the plant. So,
Okay, got it.
and
Okay.
we hit our numbers for the year.
Terrific,
Yep.
terrific. All right, Scott, sorry.
Okay, I'd like to go just one more question deeper on this
Yep.
take or pay thing. Okay, so, and this kind of relates to the Batavia situation. So we, Winnetka, implement, let's say we put the solar, let's not use that. Let's say we incent a lot of our residents, and a lot of our residents put in solar, put in fuel pumps, right? We reduce our demand, let's say from, 18 megawatts on average, 19 megawatts on average. Let's say we're down to 15 megawatts, okay? That 5 megawatts that we're no longer getting charged for, right? IMEA has a commitment to Prairie State for that let's say that 5 megawatts, okay? What does IMEA do with that?
Right, so they have contractual rights to that capacity, which is what you're referring to. So they would primarily try to find somewhere else in the agency to use it. So
When you say the agency, you mean
the
within?
members, right, within the
PJ.
membership.
Okay, within, first of all, their members.
They would start with the membership.
Okay.
So if there's a rural town that's getting a large factory, an industrial customer, or if a data center is going to move into one of our member towns, they would try to allocate that capacity within the membership first. And then from there, they would have to find some way to extract value out of that if it had value in the market, if it weren't being used within our load profile.
And can they go out and sell that in the PJM market?
Yeah, my understanding is if they, in the example of a member not signing, is that, which would be the biggest example of that, they would use that capacity first, like I said, to meet the agency's needs, and then if not, they would enter into bilateral contracts with other people, like I said, a data center or another customer that wants that portion, or they would just sell it on the market.
So they're like a manufacturing plant, they can go out and sell that to anybody? Okay,
Right. They have rights to the asset, and the asset has value.
okay. One more question?
One more.
I want to talk about our power plant and compensation for our power plant.
Yep.
In the contract, in attachment I, it gets into a little bit of how we get compensated. And that talks about kind of base levels of compensation, production, fuel reimbursement, things like that. How does that compensation get adjusted in 2036, in 2036?
Sure.
We're sitting here in 2040. How are we getting compensated? Are we getting compensated at $2 a kilowatt hour per month, or
Right, so the escalation that was voted on by the board unanimously based on the recommendation from the generation subcommittee was to increase those capacity payments over the next 5 years. They're phasing it in. So between 2025 and 2030, the capacity structure is going to increase to make it equal across the board. For us, what that means, if we were to run our machines as in their current state, it would be about another $2.6 million. At any time, the committee can bring that back and ask for more. I think right now, based on where the market is, that structure seems to be a good price signal to the members. At the April board meeting, 3 members elected to, and the board voted unanimously to approve adding capacity to the profile. So I believe it was Peru, Waterloo, and one other member are adding dedicated capacity to the agency's portfolio. They're dedicating either diesel generators or gas turbines to IMEA to receive those capacity payments. So time will tell. We can revisit the issue. IMEA can always revisit the issue in a few years. We can see where the capacity markets are. If we feel we're entitled to more compensation to make the operations work, we could always revisit the issue.
Okay, thank you.
But that there is in that contract, it does say that the capacity payments shall not be reduced. So where the capacity payments are now and where they're going to be in 2030, they cannot be reduced from that point.
Okay.
Okay, Nick. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you for your work on this.
Oh, okay.
You've done some real heavy lifting. We really appreciate it. On the website in the packet is Nick's agenda report, which summarizes sort of soup to nuts this whole review process over the last 14 months. So thank you for that as well. At this point, we'll open up for public comment. I'd ask for public comment from the audience. And again, please direct your comments to the council members. We'd appreciate that. And we'll refrain from boos and cheers and so on and so forth. So we have a list of people that signed up for a public comment. We may have some others that would like to speak as well, and that's fine. We'll limit the comment to 3 minutes apiece, if you would. We'll start with King Poor.
Good evening. King Poor, 735 Walden. I was out of town for the June 3rd meeting, and I watched the video, and it's very clear from that you've decided that you want to go with IMEA. But there is still a key part of due diligence that still remains, and that is you need to have an independent review of this complex contract by an experienced energy lawyer. Now, I'm not an energy lawyer, but I am a lawyer that has litigated many contract disputes over the years, and one thing that they all have in common, though they're varied, is that before the contract is signed, both sides thought they knew all about the risks involved, and then after the contract is signed, they learned, sometimes to their surprise, that they hadn't fully appreciated the risks. I want to be quick to add that I have a lot of respect for the abilities of our village attorney. Peter is a fine lawyer, and he has served our village well in many ways. But this transaction has only involved one energy lawyer so far, and that's IMEA's energy lawyer. And he is not and cannot be, as a matter of basic legal ethics, a lawyer for the village of Winnetka. So we have a situation where we've got a contract with a 30-year commitment, $200 million at issue with taxpayer dollars. It's complex, it's technical, and it involves an area of specialized legal practice. And so when one side of that transaction has an energy lawyer and we do not have an energy lawyer, we simply cannot do adequate due diligence. But you still have time to do the right thing here. IMEA's board's going to meet next week. And at that meeting, they're going to consider an extension of the open season for Naperville and St. Charles and for 60 days. And there's no good reason that Winnetka should not also receive the courtesy that goes along with that and have additional time to do its own due diligence with a legal review. The request here is really simple. You can adopt this ordinance tonight, but at the same time, you can make a provision, you can make it subject to an independent legal review over the next 60 days. It costs you nothing, and you have everything to gain by a legal review of this contract that is independent by an experienced energy lawyer, and it'll address the whole idea that are there other issues out there that are lurking? I mean, even right now, we're having discussions about what is the meaning of take or pay or take and pay. That is the very kind of thing, again, I'm not an energy lawyer, but that's the independent review that you would benefit from. And we've talked a lot about risk over the last year. And those risks are risks that are, in most cases, years in the future. But what I'm talking about tonight is a real risk of not having an independent legal review by an experienced energy lawyer for this contract. That is a real risk. And if you were any other organization, you would say, you know, with a contract of this magnitude, why aren't we having this kind of review?
Okay, King.
And so I'm just going to finish up here. I'll finish my thought. So when we have this risk, there's no reason to incur that risk right now. So for all these reasons, please do not subject our village to this kind of really needless risk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, King. Next, Roger Hochschild.
Thank you. Roger Hochschild, 682 Ardsley Road. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As you prepare for one of the most consequential votes you will cast as village trustees, I want to make sure that you understand the truth behind some of the justifications I heard at the last meeting for recklessly proceeding to commit Winnetka to stay with IMEA for 30 years without even looking at alternatives. None of you should take comfort in the fact that we will have a seat at the table or that we are IMEA. Winnetka's one vote will be overwhelmed by the 30-plus other IMEA members, largely pro-coal downstate communities, since the renewable-focused Naperville and St. Charles will likely be leaving IMEA. None of you should use reliability as a reason to renew with IMEA. The reliability that we have experienced in Winnetka comes from the work of PJM and our village-owned delivery system. It has nothing to do with IMEA. None of you should use cost as a reason to renew with IMEA. What we saw at the last meeting, comparing a one-month bill between ComEd and IMEA, was a meaningless exercise, as was the celebration of the money we get back from IMEA for having our own power plant. There has been no real analysis of the cost of alternatives to IMEA, including the value others would pay for our plant. In addition, the cost of decommissioning Prairie State represents another huge risk for our community. There are no detailed estimates, and the cost to decommission Pleasant Prairie, a 20% smaller coal plant, has been estimated at $1 billion. Even with all the time that has been collectively spent on this issue, none of you should say we have looked at alternatives. At the village's request, Mark Pruitt performed a very limited analysis constrained by pro-IMEA village staff, and the village chose not to hear directly from alternative providers. Finally, none of you should justify your decision by saying we can still pursue behind-the-meter alternatives. This is not an either-or decision. the right contract with the right provider will make behind-the-meter initiatives even more powerful. Do not rush into a huge decision that does not need to be made tonight. Naperville and St. Charles will likely get a 60-day extension for IMEA. Have the courage to insist that Winnetka team up with them for a thorough exploration of alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ken Bayless.
Thank you. And I'd like to start off by thanking you for, I know it's been a long slog to get to this point, and I certainly appreciate your deliberations, and I don't take that lightly at all. I'd like to just read a statement for the council. From 2005 to, my name's Ken Bayless, and I reside at 426 Maple, where I've lived for 43 years. From 2005 to 2009, I sat on the village council when Winnetka's last IMEA contract negotiations took place. I sat where you sit. We wrestled with the future of coal, the Prairie State Power Plant and mine, options for renewable energy, peak power, the future of Winnetka's gas power plant, all of it, just as you're doing now. We listened to the IMEA experts, our own village manager, director of water and electric, and paid consultants. They all seemed to be in the same camp, and it went something like this. Only coal can satisfy peak power demand. Renewables just aren't there yet. Rate estimates are expected to beat ComEd rates. The Prairie State plant and the mine is state-of-the-art. Our fellow IMEA members, like Naperville, think this contract is the best option. We need to protect Winnetka from future uncertainty. That was 2007, if I have my dates right. I don't recall at that time any voices opposing the contract except our own within the village council. It took us a long time to get there, but in the end, we voted unanimously to approve the IMEA contract. I regret that vote and consider it a personal failing of my tenure as village trustee. I could have cast a protest vote, but I didn't. That's on me. I took some solace in the fact that our marriage to Prairie State might expire in 2035. The idea of extending that relationship now to 2055 gives me chills. If the intervening years since the last IMEA contract have taught us anything, it's this. The predictability of capital costs for coal-fired plant construction, coal mine development, it's all a crapshoot. Prairie State is the poster child. The same might be said for other forms of energy production, yet staying married to coal will not help us reach the right side of environmental history. And we must reach that side if we are to deliver a healthy planet to our grandchildren. At some point, someone needs to lead. Someone has to take a risk and change direction, because in the direction we're headed, no one wins. Now it's your turn to face the tough decisions, your turn to lead. There are energy models to follow. Many foreign countries have taken action to wean themselves from fossil fuels. Winnetka can too. It just takes some brave votes. Please postpone a vote on the IMEA contract until it has been reviewed by an independent energy attorney and alternate providers have been consulted. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Ken. We appreciate that. Bob Zabors?
Bob Zabers, 321 Willow, 30 years or so in Winnetka. People consider me an energy expert, but I'm here on my personal behalf, and hopefully all of ours. As I said before, you can't sign up for this contract tonight because actually you don't know. Scott's asking some good questions. You're still unraveling this. You just don't know. The 60 days are a free option. Take the 60 days. Get professional help from an attorney who understands the energy markets. I've done billions of dollars of deals. This is one of the worst contract I've ever seen. Truthfully, this is the worst contract. For example, you haven't actually had in the public domain described the track record of IMEA. We just heard a great description there. The pitch was, okay, we're going to invest in new technology. It went $1 billion over budget. We had to bail them out. What do you have in the contract that will stop that from happening next time? I'm not picking on IMEA. Let's just use the contract to learn from past mistakes. We haven't heard from the community. We haven't heard from the caucus. You haven't heard the details of where this comes from. I applaud the sustainability effort. We own, and we're continuing to own, Trimble County, Kentucky. The kids who are here from New Trier, their kids will be paying coal miners in Kentucky to mine and burn coal for us when they're in New Trier. That's what you're signing up for. We will be the dirtiest community in the North Shore, this entire area, because you're locking into Kentucky coal, which won't go away till 2050. That hasn't been brought up. If we choose to do that, let's choose. But you're not given the information to do that. I've been on boards, you're on boards. You only have to get the information that you have. Take the 60 days, get more information. Capacity, great questions. What's Tower Road worth? Well, what do you think is worth more in a stress day like today? Tower Road in Cook County here to keep the lights on, or something in downstate? You are signing up to a contract that blends them all equally. Let's use the math we just heard, 23 megawatts. Great, I'm glad it proved that out. Today, look online, PJM, $8 or more for capacity. We're getting 3 or 4, $4 difference, 23 megawatts, 12 months, $1 million that is not being paid to Winnetka residents. $250 per house is being given away just because we're not getting the fair market value of our assets. Just have a lawyer look at the contract and just adjust it. Let's just get paid for what we have. Tower Road was fought for decades of residents to keep it. It's very valuable. Just value it correctly and get paid for it. Take the 60 days, figure that out. There are a lot of things here that you're taking unlimited risk. We just heard about decommissioning costs. This contract gives you unlimited exposure, gives all of us unlimited exposure. 2035, nuclear is going to be built in Illinois. What if IMEA takes that? What if something happens? We have our share of unlimited risk. Just hire an energy attorney, take a look, mitigate our risks. I don't care if 27 other communities haven't hit the contract in that way. They're not us. This is downstate people who don't have the same options we do. We have a power plant, we're in PJM. PJM capacity is worth much more than MISO capacity. So as an energy professional, that's what you heard from a lot of people who were so angry about this over the last few meetings. I've lived my life in the electric markets in North America primarily. This is an affront to our community because we can fix it. If you want to do the contract, do the contract. Get a lawyer, lawyer it up like each one of you would do in your own business lives. It's the right thing to do if that's what you want to do. But you need professional help. Hope you get it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Katie Scullion.
Katie Scullion, 570 Oak Street. I hate going after our foremost expert on energy in Winnetka. I wanted to follow up on our overall request for the attorney review. And I want to go back to the topic of the take and pay contract and the reference to Batavia. The point of bringing up, this is a take and pay. It has those words in the contract. It is different than the Batavia one. The point of bringing up Batavia previously is that their counsel thought they understood the contract, and they ended up buying a lot more than they needed. These contracts are designed to protect these coal assets and these coal generation assets. They need to be paid for by someone. So I want to just bring up one specific point, which I have emailed all of you. Brian Keyes, in the introduction to this contract in May 2024, in his memo, he wrote, Winnetka's pay is based on load ratio portion of agency cost. All rates are cost-based. So we did some research on that. It actually could mean that when residents and businesses install solar panels, batteries, other clean energy technologies that might be invented in 2035, 2045, they do not reduce Winnetka's obligation to pay its share, its load portion, its portion share of IMEA's cost. So I ask you, have you asked for IMEA to show you their costs, their plan, their cost plan? We don't think you have, and I will tell you why. We are a public power agency, and it is not a regulation that they generate an IRP that would show you some of those costs. In fact, there's a bill down in Springfield, sponsored by Senator Laura Fine, that is called the Municipal and Co-op Transparency and Planning Bill, that would save communities like Winnetka who don't know to ask for their costs in an IRP, which is industry standard. So if that passed, you would be getting those costs, and you'd have a better idea on what you were signing up for. This would all be uncovered if we talk to an attorney. Maybe some of my facts are wrong, but I can tell you, like, genuinely, we are being told this contract by experts is tough. So one last quick thing. We understand part of the pressure IMEA is giving you is at the end of the month, their members who have signed will be voting on whether to close this open season, and that there's a chance they vote to close the season, and we could be left with a penalty. We want to acknowledge that. That's a lot of pressure on you, because you could vote, and who knows what kind of a penalty they will get. It's not a very nice partner to do that to us, but we don't think it's a pretty big risk because, as you know, more than 40% of the load hasn't been re-signed with Naperville and St. Charles. So IMEA is in a tough spot. So we think you're safe. We say balance that risk, take the risk of the penalty, and take your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Those are the only names I have on the list. Why don't we'll start on the left side here. Show of hands on the left side. Come on up. Ted, you want to come up, or? Okay, ladies first. Here we go.
Ivy Sundell, 93 Warwick Road. As you probably know, I had started a petition a couple of weeks ago, and this weekend I started doing in-person paper collection for the petition. And the petition says, tell Winnetka Council not to sign the 20-year contract extension with the Illinois Municipal Electricity Agency, IMEA, that uses 80% coal. And right now I have 120 signatures, just mostly from this weekend. When I talk to all these people in person, I have to say most of them have no idea what I was talking about. That we have not done anything to educate the community. We're always talking to the same group of people here who comes to your study sessions. Nobody else knows what's going on, and they're the ones affected. And that is not right. They need to be educated so they know what's going on. I have sent you an email with 12 points, and one of the points that bugs me a lot is that when I look at my own bill, the June bill, for example, and I looked at the last 5 bills as well, I can see that there are 2 categories. There's the residential and there's the customer charge. Neither one seems to say what they are. And then I look at Nick's presentation last time, because I asked him about it, and he said, just look at what I wrote. And I looked at the bills he presented, and they were almost the same usage as mine, amazingly. But again, they did not break up any of the IMEA costs, like your debt service, your operating cost, your cleanup cost that I know is in there, but where are they? How much is that? We cannot see any of it. All he broke out was the supply rate and comparing that supply rate with other supply rates. But that is deceptive, because all these other costs comes with going with IMEA. You can't just say, oh, these don't count. That's the whole cost, So then I looked at what he said was the bottom line. And guess what? My bottom line is more expensive than ComEd for May and June. It's like, no, somehow the arithmetic is wrong, or somehow we're hiding some of the costs so that people don't know about it. And that is just not right. So I do urge you to pay more attention to how it was presented, because it's all put in together and lumped together so that people have the wrong idea that we are cheaper. We are not. Not even 10 years from now. We don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now. Even today is not.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ted?
Hi, Ted Winichenko. So I don't think I'll spend 3 minutes. So, I've been coming to Heckle at these meetings for, I don't know, like more than a decade. And, it's frustrating and it's sad to me to see how this all happens, because at this point, almost everything, it's a done deal, right? You've introduced it, almost a done deal. And I really hope, although don't think it'll happen, but I really hope that you will step back and reconsider approving this. I find it interesting that just before this, you talked about sustainability, and you acknowledge that all these things that we're doing are changing the environment and making things bad. And then in the very next breath, you're talking about continuing the use of coal for another 50, well, I'm exaggerating, but 30 years. And it's mind-boggling. I mean, what's the point of saying that we're going to care about sustainability and green energy and all that stuff if in the very next breath we're going to say, well, we don't really care about that because what we're looking at is the bottom line. And we think that this deal is the thing that gets us where we want to be in terms of energy stability at the cheapest cost. Damn the torpedoes. And I think that's a problem. The council, this village has historically, and it goes back as long as I've been here, you can look at the dollar and cents, you can look at what's on the balance sheet, but you keep failing to consider all the costs that aren't neatly put on a balance sheet. You acknowledge that they're there. Today you acknowledge that they were there, that we are destroying our planet. But in the very next breath, you don't seem to care, and we're going to go with coal for another 30 years. I urge you to slow down, reconsider, do some of the things other people have said.
Thank you for the comment. On this side, Patrick?
Good evening, Patrick Hanley, 589 Lincoln. Thank you so much for all the time that you've spent over the last year, 2 years, learning about power markets, learning about our power plants, learning about all of this. I know we've all had a master's education in an incredibly complex topic, so thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. I know you've learned a lot because these conversations keep getting better and deeper and more interesting. I will say, if we do have this 60-day grace period that IMEA is considering for Naperville and St. Charles, I do think it's well worth us taking it too, in part to learn whether or not Naperville and St. Charles stay out or in. Because if they do leave IMEA and 40% of that capacity does leave, that's going to really dramatically change our cost ratio that we just talked about and learned about. Our rates are based on cost. The fixed cost of the assets that we own, that fixed cost is going to rise as more capacity leaves the membership, right? So it's going to get more expensive. Our proportion of Prairie State and Trumbull County will rise proportionately. And then separately, the power mix is going to change, right? Because if we have to purchase a certain amount of electricity from the coal plants, and if our capacity declines because our biggest members leave, then all of a sudden, what's to say our coal mix won't jump from 80% to 90% to 100%, and all the good things that we say that we're going to do will just get crowded out by contractual obligations that we already have. So we could well be looking at a world where we are 100% coal power. And I would say, if you were to take a step back, and if you were approached by 27 communities in downstate Illinois, all smaller than ours, and they said, hey, Winnetka, in 10 years, do you want to go in with us on 2 coal plants, one in Illinois and one in Kentucky, and do it for 20 years? Would you take that deal in 2025? I don't know that you would. I don't know that you would. So I would agree with a lot of things that have been said before. Look for Independent Energy Council. Give it the 60 days to see what Naperville and St. Charles do. And I want to conclude by genuinely applauding the sustainability initiatives that President Dearborn has talked about in the past. Elise, I thought your presentation was terrific. I'm really excited about a lot of the things that you covered. But I would say if we re-sign this contract and if we continue to be 80% coal, 100% coal, whatever it is, we start from a really significant carbon deficit. So all the talk of solar, storage, all these cool things that we could do, we are climbing out of a hole that is quite deep relative to, I think, our responsibility and all of our peer communities. So I think we just need to internalize that and know that, to the point that Ted made. And I recognize it's a difficult, complex decision tonight, so thank you for your time.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that. Come on up.
Hello, I'm Rory Hackbarth, 345 Locust Road. Thank you for all the energy you've put into this topic that is beyond most people's, beyond easily comprehensible for most people. So I agree with what everyone has said. I'm here it's going to be a little more not so scientific, but I'm here to urge you to delay adopting this ordinance, really for 5 reasons. One, I don't think residents understand what's going on here. I spent a lot of time with kind of the 40 and under crowd. That's not me, but I have a lot of those friends. I don't see anyone like that here. I wish. They simply don't know what's going on with this. And when you just start to talk about it very briefly in these conversations, they're kind of shocked and horrified, but then they're off to play dates and schools and soccer or whatever, but they just don't know. So I think we need time to educate the broader community again than just the people that come to these meetings. I'm sure that the majority of those residents and then all residents can agree that coal is not the future of energy. It's just not for Winnetka, not for the United States, not for the world. It's not. We're going in the wrong direction. As far as I know, the residents, I'm going back to the residents, have not been asked for input on this. It was not on the Caucus Council survey last year. I wish we could hold off. The council is preparing questions now. It's going to be fielded mid-July to early August. Results will be in by early fall. If there's any way to get some community input to delay, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. Personally, I don't understand why outside energy companies haven't been invited to present alternate plans. That's shocking. And then I just don't believe any cost of delaying signing this contract outweighs the risk of signing it. So that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Come on up in the back there.
Hi, my name is Lynn Norrell. I live at 1045 Dinsmore Road. I've been a resident of Winnetka for 14 years. I actually hosted the parade at 1041 Elm for 12 years. Thank you for your time and your service and this opportunity to speak. Just, may I ask you a question? Are you the voice of Winnetka? Are you the ones who are making the choice for our community and our future? I believe yes. I believe that to my heart. But voting and signing the IME contract is no. That is a no. Let me just step back. Let's take a scenario. You go to your doctor, 10 years, he says, look, your heart's looking bad. 10 years, you might need a heart transplant. There's innovations coming up, there's progress, there's things you could do. You don't have to make a decision until 10 years. But he says, but actually, I have a heart for you today. You could take this heart transplant. We could give you 20 years. We could even give you maybe 30. There's risk. We don't know. But if you take this heart now, you're out of any innovations. You're out of any opportunity to take that transplant in 10 years when you may actually need it or may not, because you don't know the progress that is being developed at this time. If my father came to me and said, I could get a transplant today, I would say, no way. No, you don't do that. You are making a decision. You're giving up your choice. I think if you sign this contract, you give up your choice at the negotiation table for IMEA. I think they need us more than we need them. I think it is so important that you step back. There's no reason. Why are they so adamant to get us on here? I think they need us. I think there's a story that's not untold. And it is true. I have kids aged 18, 17, 14, and 12. I am busy. I have not been here for these meetings. But yes, I talk to other moms and they're like, wait, what is going on? We need to stop. You have the choice. You are the voice. Our future is depending on you. Vote no for IMEA. There is time. Don't lose your choice. Don't lose your negotiation power. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Anyone else in public comment? Come on up.
Good evening. My name's David Mulligan, live at 1080 Pelham Road, resident for 29 years in Winnetka. I'm here to add my voice in opposition to the signing of this contract, and I simply want to, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I wanted to share one observation with you all, because I sympathize with the complexity of this decision, and I know many of you and your desire is to make the right decision for this village. And one of those concerns that I understand is at the forefront of your concerns to make sure that this community has the power that it needs in the future. Every session I've been to, much has been made about the fact that Meta is now building its own nuclear plant, and Amazon is building its own nuclear plant, and that there's this been spike in the cost of power. We have to understand when we think about this being a 30-year decision, we're at an unusual inflection point with the introduction of AI, and the markets have been in turmoil in a very short period of time. Do not let that fear of this short-term spike of demand for electricity overwhelm your sense that this is a 30-year horizon. There's already been alternative AI models that have been introduced that may not consume power. So I understand in this moment, it seems like a very risky decision to sort of think about the availability of power in the future. But we are a smart, capable community where we can be aligned with Naperville and St. Charles, and I urge you to have the courage to say, this is a moment here. We'll be able to figure this out with the resources of the community. Thank you for your efforts and time.
Thank you very much for that public comment. Anyone else? Okay. We will close public comment. Thank you for all the comments. We appreciate that. And we'll bring it back up here for some discussion or thoughts amongst council members before we decide to vote on this issue. Who would like to get some thoughts? Anybody? Someone has the thoughts. I'll give some thoughts. I'll just say that to start here, you know, there are issues that come before this council that are slam dunk issues. And I know that the folks out here think this is a slam dunk issue. This is not. This is a hard issue. This weighs very heavily to think about the current, the future, all the issues that come into play on this. As it's been duly noted, it's complex in all aspects. And so, you know, what makes it hard is that we all have friends and neighbors that are sitting right out there right now. And, you know, this weighs on us, I can tell you that. So I just want to keep that in perspective here. Scott?
All right. As I said 2 weeks ago, a lot of points that I definitely agree with. You know, I think that in a lot of people's mind, this is coal versus green energy, right? And you know, and also in a lot of people's minds, it's IMEA versus Winnetka. It's, you know, we need to do more to educate the village. I kind of reject a number of those points, not 100%. Clearly, you know, and this point was made, you know, we pass a resolution saying we're all for sustainability, and then we go and vote on something like this. It seems very inconsistent. But I think one of the things that really burdens us up here is the uncertainty that we face trying to project 10 years out and what are the residents of this village going to be needing 10 years from now, right? And this situation is made more complicated in that we're in the middle of an energy transition. We have growth in energy demand, and it's not just for a short period of time, right? If you look at PJM's 10-year projections, they're saying compounded annual growth rate of about 3% of peak demand. That's like 30 gigawatts of power. On top of that, they're looking at sunsetting another 25 to 30 gigawatts of power. That's 60 gigawatts of power in an environment where you're not seeing many power plants being built. You're seeing solar fields being developed, which have, as we learned throughout this whole process, a fraction of the credit, right? You're seeing transmission lines still taking 7 to 10 years to build. So we have an energy transition, we have growing demand, we have a political environment which is currently, and probably for the next 4 years, anti-green energy, right? And that's not going to make it easy to build the capacity that's needed. And on top of that, we're probably entering an economic environment of high interest rates. So now, who's going to go out and invest in all this new capacity? So this is not just a slam dunk, hey, I'm against coal, let's get off of it, and let's 10 years from now hope the residents can have some, something affordable. So it's, we're dealing with uncertainty here, and everything might be great, it may all work out, but it's a little bit unclear right now. I also reject, I think the premise that IMEA is taking advantage of us is, in my mind, wishful thinking. I mean, I think that we were involved in the drafting of the contract. Anybody who's been involved in bidding for work loves the situation where you can actually get involved in drafting the contract. Well, we were at the table. So, in the take versus pay and understanding the issues around delivery point and what's behind the meter, the contract's pretty clear on that. We know what we can do, right? We have the capabilities to do what we want and to not have to pay for that electricity. In terms of decommissioning costs, I've expressed my point that, the estimates were based on returning Prairie State to a greenfield site. Okay, let's revisit those. Let's make sure that we're extra conservative on that. I think that, they made a best effort, but let's review that again. Having said all that, right, I obviously have wrestled like everyone else here. I think that IMEA is the way to go. Having said that, I take the point about approving the resolution, approving this point, subject to the review of an energy attorney. I might be just one voice on that, but I think that, if anything, it adds to our comfort level. I know I've reviewed the contract as well as a non-lawyer can review a contract and asked a lot of questions and gotten answers that make me feel comfortable. But if we do have a period of time here, having an energy attorney look at it, I don't think it's going to uncover anything that's massive risk to us that we don't know about. But I think if we have the time, we owe it to our residents to take that step. So, I'm sorry that more residents didn't invest in this and didn't get educated. But having sat up here on the council for now going on my 5th year, that's that way with every issue. People have busy lives. They try and elect officials who are conscientious, who put the effort in, and that's our responsibility. And I think we're doing that as best we can. But I would be in favor of approving this subject to the legal review by an energy attorney.
So just to understand that, Scott, you would, just so we're clear on this, you would want to be a part of the extension agreement that might be proposed in late June. So are you saying you want to approve this, but then if the extension's not granted, you want to
I would.
own the
I would,
approval of this contract?
I would suggest that we ask for an extension for 30 days or 60 days to have an energy attorney review the contract.
Okay, so you would not be in favor of extending the agreement at this time?
I guess I'm putting a proposal forward to the council.
But I want to understand your proposal.
My proposal
Is to vote to extend the agreement, but,
subject to,
and if you don't get the extension, then what?
I think if we don't get I'm going to reserve my comment on that.
Okay, well, the question, it's sort of, is it a free
Bob,
lunch or
I
not?
have a point of a question there.
Okay.
Before you consider that. I've done hundreds of contracts. It does not take a month to do a contract, to look at a contract. It takes a week, a few days. So I guess I'm not sure if one forces the other, even if we decide as a council to do that. I'm not sure why that warrants an extension.
So
It's
what-
the 17th of.
Okay, so your thought relative to what Scott's suggesting is what?
No, I'm just saying if this council decides they want, I've spoken with Peter and the group, and I felt pretty comfortable, but very comfortable with where we are. But if that extra step is needed, I'm not sure why that can't be done the next week.
And I'm fine with that, too.
Okay, okay. Hang on a second. Anything else, Rob, on your thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, I'll throw a few out there. I articulated where I was on June 3rd. I think it was the June 3rd meeting. We have read and listened to each and every comment from the village, all the residents in council, on the streets. And we discussed these scenarios. We obviously, it's not our policy to speak when we're getting comments at us, but we have spoken with a lot of different people. We've spoken with people that you recommended, and that's how we arrived at this. It wasn't taken lightly. So I'm a little frustrated when words like reckless and we're pro-coal and cost is not really a consideration. That's a little frustrating to hear up here, to be honest with you. Nothing could be further from the truth in how we've gone after this. Trustee took a great deal of time over the past 15 months to thoughtfully and transparently study the options and provide measured reasons and responses for these decisions. This is not a rush decision, even if we don't like the timing of IMEA on this and what they put on our laps. There is not a trustee or a staff member that I've spoken to that does not want to get to a greener solution for our energy, for our water, for our world. We are not at odds with the residents on this, I can assure you. You're not working to convince this council that a greener future is important. We all know this is true, and we have vowed to take unprecedented actions, as you've seen today. While it may seem a little ironic, it is obviously, we were clear that we wanted to take these steps to bring concrete steps to this village to make it better. But that doesn't mean the decision on IMEA has to change all of a sudden based on all the facts of this case. We have looked hard at all the possibilities for our energy future. And unlike the stormwater solution, which I spoke about earlier in June, where I sat on that side of the table and was very passionate about not putting a 10-foot stormwater sewer all the way to the lake and dumping the water in the lake. The residents, and this was kind of interesting because I received we received a letter from one of the residents who was here and said, the residents didn't come up with that solution to fix the stormwater. Well, that's not true. The residents actually did. And unfortunately, this is a completely different set of facts. And we've worked hard for any type of solutions that we could get to greener faster, and we're going to do our best to do so. So with that, I do thank you all I do have friends and neighbors here, and I get it. I appreciate your time in advocating so passionately, and on this matter, and it has been a very tough 15 months, which we take very seriously. So,
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Trustee Handler?
I won't repeat myself too much from 2 weeks ago, and I support the comments that my fellow trustees have made so far. I just want to sort of, thank you, Nick, for the great summary on what has been this long process that has been very transparent and thorough. I mean, the community can, as Scott mentioned, community can come in anytime and share thoughts, share letters. I think we've all been very good in listening to all the different perspectives. In terms of an attorney review, again, I'm not an attorney, but this is not a brand-new contract to us in many ways. I'm sure there are subtle differences that were put into place, but this is not a brand-new thing that we're undertaking. I can see perhaps if this was something radical and new that we were undertaking, we might pursue some additional review, but in this case, I feel comfortable that over the past 14, 15 months, we and staff and have done the work that needed to feel comfortable on voting for this evening.
I'll jump in. 3 things I'll comment on. Actually, before I do that, again, I do thank our community members for being here with us. Your voice does help inform the decisions that we have to make. Unfortunately, the decisions that we make aren't going to 100% of the time please everyone. So that's the unfortunate part of, I guess, when we have a democracy, but I would say the positive is that all voices are heard, all positions are listened to. And on that, over the last year and a half, I reflect a lot on the comments I've heard from the public, but as well, I want to give a lot of weight to the in-house experts that we have from our team, whether it be Brian or Nick, or the outside assistance that we received, whether it be Mark Pruitt or other folks that we've leaned on to help us make an informed decision, or at least help us go through this process. And I trust wholeheartedly the information that we're being provided by our experts. I would say I have not detected any sort of bias or a perception that the folks that we rely on, in-house and outside, have an opinion that would lead us one way or another. I feel as though it's been an objective process, not subjective. So I think, especially I thank our in-house expertise, and I think the inside relationship that we have at IMEA as a board member gives us an insight into what is actually happening behind the scenes, and that information has flowed transparently to us as a council. Number 2, I've said this before, is that I look at this, there's like a 3-legged stool that we have. We have cost, reliability, and sustainability. And extending this contract gives us 2 of those 3 legs. With the information that we've been provided by the experts that we lean on to make these decisions, contrary, unfortunately, to I feel a lot of the experts in the audience, is that with this contract extension, we get 2 out of those 3 legs of the stool. I just don't feel as though I've gained the information to have the confidence and trust that if we abandon this contract and that we, let's say, are committed to the sustainability front, that we don't have any commitment or any leg to stand on at this point in time, 10 years ahead of time. And with that, I would say, we are right now, at a minimum, we're locked into another 10 years of the existing contract. The way it's been presented, we have 10 to 20 additional years, depending on how we slice and dice or how we look at the situation, of additional relationship with a non-renewable resource. And I feel as though, as I've stated multiple times publicly, I'm not a gambling person. I don't want to bet the farm. I personally would rather lean on the security of having cost and reliability met. And but this leads to my 3rd point, is leaning in on our ability from the inside to help influence and shape the future of this consortium, IMEA. And that is, I think, an important element here. It allows us to change, to help affect change from the inside, instead of abandoning an organization that has been a reliable partner to us, of which we are an owner of, for the foreseeable future. If we abandon this contract, I feel as though we put ourselves at risk to just be a very small party at the table competing with thousands of other communities for the scarce resource that I personally believe, and maybe it's a flashpoint with energy demand, but I believe that we run the risk of putting ourselves at significant risk in the future if the energy demands continue to increase. But I'm excited about the opportunity from the inside to help shape that change. We have an equal vote, whether we're a big city or a small community, on the IMEA board to help shape the future. And I think we should lean on that strongly and try to affect change. And it's been stated, reported before, we have the ability with the current contract, the way it's presented, to be able to implement our own member, what's the acronym, MDR? And what does that stand for again? Member Directed Resource, thank you. Within our community, starting with the landfill and evaluation of what we can actually do to help reduce our reliance on the coal plant. And I would say once we get to that point, I think we should work strongly as part of the sustainability effort to pursue full-heartedly how we can get to that as quickly as possible so we don't wait 10 years to try to have some accomplishment, but we do it now. And then once we hit that, as far as I understand, at least the door is open for us to go back to IMEA and say, we would like to pursue more opportunities to lessen our community's reliance on coal. And I believe having those opportunities will give us a stronger ability to affect change over the long term while keeping the cost and reliability in check. So, but again, thank you, community, for raising your voices. The comments I've made, or maybe others have made, I know will not resonate with you and may not like the outcome if we are voting in favor of this tonight. But I believe it's the right decision that we have to make right now. Thank you.
All right.
Trustee Orsic.
Yes, so people have all said great things. I don't need to go over everything that I said as well, but I also want to thank everybody. This has been a lot of energy used learning energy, and we hope that you'll still be here for the sustainability measures that we're taking and that we can do things moving forward. There have been a lot of statements about not getting information from power marketers. We did. We reached out to them. Nobody is willing to give pricing that far in advance. We do know that people would be willing to provide us with energy, but we don't know now what the terms would be, what it would cost, anything like that. And most of those power marketers are also using coal from the same coal plant that we are. I agree that I think staff and our consultant, Mark Pruitt, did a great job. I don't think anybody's pro IMEA. We found him at the Winnetka Energy Consortium, or seminar that he was invited to. And all of us have spoken to neighbors, to friends, to strangers at the farmer's market. Lots of people have different ideas. Lots of people are busy and aren't paying that much attention. But as I think Scott said, that's always the case. I did have somebody come up at the farmer's market last weekend and say, I'm glad you introduced the ordinance. There's a lot of uncertainty in the energy market. Like, not everybody thinks exactly the same about this. And sitting here, we have obligations to all 12,000 residents to make sure that they have reliable and affordable electricity. Reasonable minds can differ on the best path forward, and it doesn't have to be divisive. Disagreement on these issues doesn't have to be, good versus bad, green versus coal. I'm in favor of extending the contract because I believe it's the best path forward at this time. I'm a little concerned about the idea that we wait and see if Naperville and St. Charles are given an extension, because we right now are beyond the deadline. And we have no reason to believe they will be given the extension. So by default, if we ask for the extension, what we're doing is saying that we're not signing. And if they give the extension, that's fine. But if they don't, that is the decision we've made by default. And that would make some people, very happy. They're willing to risk that. But I wonder if other residents in the village might end up coming in more when they realize that we've left it for 8 years from now to figure out what their energy supply is going to be. So I don't know that we had 14 months to do that, and I think we were comfortable with our attorney's review. And I think that not doing it now is making a choice not to re-sign with them.
Thank you. Thank you for all those comments. I can count noses. You know, I know how this vote would go. Having said that, I'd like to ask our village attorney if we have a basis to go into a brief closed session on this issue.
The answer to that is yes. First, on the agenda, we have not required, but on the agenda, we do have an agenda item called closed session. We've previously gone into closed session to discuss what is allowed under the Open Meetings Act, specifically Section 2C23, which is the operation by a municipality of a municipal utility when the discussion involves contracts related to the purchase, sale, or delivery of electricity. We do have the authority. We've gone into closed session before for that purpose, and we can do so tonight if the board chooses.
Okay. The way this would work, and I need support from fellow trustees here, is that we would have a motion to go into closed session. It would not be an extended amount of time. Could be 10 minutes or so. But there's some issues I think we need to address on this topic. And so that's what I'd like to do. Can I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yep.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Okay, we will be back. It won't be too long. Okay, thank you all. We're going to call this meeting back to order. And before we go to a vote, any other comments by members of the council? Okay. I do want to mention that the motion is going to be to adopt an amended version of this ordinance, and I'm going to read the amendment. It was a recital that we added, that I asked to be added to this contract, or to this ordinance. And the recital is, whereas additionally, IMEA has committed to transition from a carbon-based portfolio to a net zero generation portfolio by 2050, and to properly plan for this transition while ensuring generation resources are in place to meet future power needs. IMEA has implemented a detailed sustainability plan to achieve zero carbon status, which requires resource planning and transitioning in the near future to secure favorable renewable energy power purchase agreements. And then it goes on to the subsequent recitals. So that is the amendment to the ordinance. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance M05-2025 as amended with the amendment that I just read?
So moved.
Second.
That's a roll call vote.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Myers? Yes. Trustee Handler?
Okay, that ordinance passes. Thank you very much. Old business, we have none. Item 10, new business, we have none. Item 11, I have two appointments that I'd like you to consider. Number one, I'd like to appoint Michael Ritter to a full term on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mike is replacing Kate Casal McNally, and Mike's term will be effective July 1st, 2025, and will expire on May 1st, 2026. Mike's essentially moving from Design Review Board over to Zoning Board. And the second is to appoint Peter Evanich to the Design Review Board. Peter is replacing Mike Ritter, and Peter's term will be effective July 1st, 2025, and will expire on May 1st, 2027. And without objection, may I have a motion to approve these appointments by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Closed session, none. And item 13, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That's a so moved in a second, and that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.